Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Roger Schoenfeld. I'm the still relatively new managing director for JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services, and very excited to be here today with you to talk about and bring together a terrific panel and set of colleagues to talk about moving beyond DIY, scalable digital stewardship solutions for distinctive collections. Let me just say a word or two by way of housekeeping, just to get us started. We are recording the webinar. We'll be sharing a link to the recording after the event for everyone who's participated. So thank you for being here. You can look forward to receiving that. You're most welcome to submit questions at any time during the session. There is a question box, which at least on my screen appears on the upper right-hand corner. And we will have a dedicated Q&A session towards the end with all of our panelists. So feel free also to bring them forward at that point. With that, let's get started. So I want to take a second to just talk a little bit about some of the community challenges and opportunities that we've been hearing about and learning about as we've engaged on distinctive collections and digital stewardship. One of the things that we've heard quite a bit from a number of libraries and archives is what we're calling today the cost of DIY. Building one's own platform, generating one's own platform experience can entail significant ongoing maintenance that consumes time and resources. Teams that may be lean can be pulled away from other work that they might otherwise be working on. And depending on how things are configured and whether they're maintained and developed, collections can be underutilized or at risk without strong discovery or preservation. And we know there can be security and other kinds of vulnerabilities as well that we may have the chance to talk about also. So there's this tension that exists when one is building or stewarding, maintaining one's own platform for distinctive collections, for digital collections. There's a tension between the strain of these local systems, these homegrown or community-sourced systems, versus some of the commitment that everyone here on this call and so many of us in the community have, our commitment to care and access and impact. So what we at Ithaca and JSTOR have created, and what we're here to talk about today, is what we've built, which is a hosted, values-aligned platform for stewardship that can scale with the mission of participating institutions. On the right-hand side of the screen here, you'll see a QR code that takes you to a report that my colleague Emily Hardman published a little earlier this year that really put the issue in I think pretty stark relief. There's no question that there's enormous benefits to homegrown systems, as she writes, their flexibility and responsiveness to specific institutional needs. However, they often depend heavily on a small number of technically skilled staff members. As one archivist put it, if our expert leaves, the entire workflow could unravel. Now, some institutions certainly have a scale where perhaps that's not a concern, but for so many others, there are real sustainability issues. And we believe that JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services has something to offer here. So I'm going in a moment to introduce my colleagues, but let me just sort of frame out the purpose of the day today. We're going to have a conversation with a set of peers, a set of colleagues who've moved away from maintaining locally hosted systems. And we're going to talk about some of the factors that drove their decisions, some of what they've learned, and some of the directions where they're heading. And then we'll hear from my colleague, a colleague of mine in just a few minutes after that. So let me take just a moment right now to introduce Zach Johnson and Michael Fitzgerald. Where am I? Michael is the Electronic Services Librarian at the University of the District of Columbia, which is the only public university in Washington, D.C. There he manages all the subscriptions, databases, ebooks, as well as the digital repository. I was particularly interested to learn that he works so closely with the university's Felix Grant Jazz Archives, which is the source for the majority of their repository's archival content. I think that's really, really interesting. It's something we'll, I hope, have a chance to talk about a bit further. And Zach is the Associate Director for Digital Special Collections at Vanderbilt University. Zach oversaw the original pilot project and eventual transition to JSTOR, what was then JSTOR Community Collections, in 2020. Zach was curator of manuscripts for many years at Vanderbilt before transitioning into his role now, where he's fully supporting digital collections, given that Vanderbilt has seen its digital content triple in just the past few years. So two very talented colleagues who are exactly right for the conversation we'll be having today, with some very complementary perspectives. So Zach and Michael, if I could ask you now to turn on your cameras, and we'll begin our panel. Thank you so much for joining us. And just to get us started, I'd love it if you could just walk us through, each of you walk us through, when did you migrate to JSTOR, and more broadly than that, what prompted your reassessment of existing systems? But just to kind of ground us in the timeline of when this happened, and what really prompted your reassessment. So Michael, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure, thanks, Roger. We at UDC are members of the Washington Research Library Consortium, and we, in the past and can still, rely heavily on their assistance because we are a very small university. We don't have a lot of staff. We don't have a lot of resources to devote to development and things like that. And so they had been hosting an instance of an open source digital repository for us and for 4 other WRLC members, but really the opening slide, was exactly the situation that they were in, because the costs of doing that just weren't right for them. And so they said, we're getting out of that business, and all of you 5 members that are doing this, you need to find alternative solutions, whether it's together or whether it's on your own, but we're not going to be hosting anymore. And so at the same time, and this is July 2023, at the same time, our JSTOR reps visited us and said, what's going on? And I mentioned this, and they said, hey, we've got a product that you might be interested in. And at the time it was called JSTOR Form, and now Digital Stewardship Services. And it really looked like it could be a good contender for meeting our needs. We didn't need to meet the needs of the entire consortium. We didn't need to meet the needs of any other university except UDC. And that was really appealing for us, because sometimes in consortial things, we've felt that, we have to sort of go with the flow, and it might not be the perfect solution for us, but since everyone else is doing it, we'll make that decision. So we went ahead and did that. We did some research. We looked at what was possible with the product at the time, and got ready and prepared for a trial. And we set up a trial in, I think, November of 2023. And we had gotten our XML exports from the previous system. We worked at sort of massaging them into a form that would be we'd be able to import into JSTOR. And over the course of the 2 months that we did this trial, we were able to actually migrate all of our collections. Now, we are a small university. We don't have a great deal of stuff. We're talking hundreds of things, not necessarily thousands of things. But we were able to do that and make an apples to apples comparison with the previous system, and see what is this going to do for us. And we were just absolutely thrilled with how easy it was to work with the JSTOR system, because in the previous system, which was open source, you needed a lot of expertise, you needed a lot of knowledge, you needed to understand all these different aspects of it. It was very flexible, that you could customize a lot of things, but we weren't doing that anyway. So the idea of saying, okay, we're gonna go with a system that's right, the JSTOR platform, is well established, but it's not something that you can go in and say, oh, well, what, I want to tweak every little aspect about the platform. JSTOR is what it is, and it's got a proven record of being successful. And it was great to be able to get our content on there in an easy way, be able to make new collections, edit collections, whatever we needed to do. We were able to do it ourselves, and that was incredibly empowering for us, because in the past we always had to submit a ticket, have someone look at this, and you always felt like it was an imposition on the consortium, because oh well, you can't do that yourself, but we'll help you. Um, but now we can do it ourselves, and it's been incredible. We've been creating new collections. We've been thinking about how to make some changes in things, and just the ease of the system has been incredibly rewarding for us. So that's how we worked when we did our migration.
Thank you, Michael. That's really helpful, sort of broad overview, and we can dig into some of the specifics a little bit further as we go. Zach, maybe at a somewhat different institutional context, you could just frame out like what prompted the reassessment from your existing system. How did you what made you decide you needed to reassess things?
Yeah, sure. And I'll say that I will echo a lot of Michael's comments and have the same thing about Roger, your slides to begin with. And I want to start too, just that as an employee of Vanderbilt, I can't endorse a specific product, but I'm happy to talk about our what we went through and why we've chosen the things we have, and why we'll continue to be a JSTOR customer here. So I'll say that we were prompted to reassess actually from a top-down perspective. I think that some library leadership were looking, this was happening during COVID 2020. And so folks had time on their hands to take a look at what our digital collections looked like, what were maybe some of the other things out there. We have all these folks that can't work in person anymore, so we should find some projects for them. And it really provided the perfect opportunity for us when one of our library administration folks were like, hey, we've heard about this great product JSTOR, and just like Michael said, let's put a bunch of staff on this. Let's try to take JSTOR's offer of help to transition as many products as we can to Forum, and then let's kind of do an apples to apples comparison of the collections. I think the reason that we were really looking for a new system was twofold. One was that as you said, Roger, in my bio, we were seeing just an explosion of digital content, and we were just faced with this very immature, I'll call it, Islandor instance that we weren't quite sure, like, was this going to be able to handle this new volume of material we had? But also, like, who was even going to do that? It looked not trash like everything, but it looked very bad to us. I didn't know how to make it look better. I'm not a designer. I don't know how to code and make the boxes appear in the right order. Yeah, like Michael was saying, I think we didn't want to rely on our IT team to be the ones that had to take all that on. We don't have a digital collections team in-house here until now. And so I think for the same reasons, when we kind of did this migration and we're able to compare things apples to apples, we just were really happy that, just like Michael said, things were really easy. It just looked good out of the box. I could give this to a student worker and they could understand how to use it in a week, rather than like trying to train somebody up and get them to understand what to do. And so that was a benefit for us when we were seeing this huge explosion in collections that needed to go somewhere. And so before we put them on this system that we don't even know if we're happy with, let's assess and find new systems, and then kind of dive in like whole hog into like a new product. And that's what JSTOR, I think, was for us.
Thank you both. It's really lovely to hear some of the benefits that you've seen in addition to the reassessment that you had to make. I know you've each spoken a bit about some of the pain points that you experienced on your previous platform. Just want to check, is there anything else that you would want to add to that, or have we more or less covered that, Zach and Michael?
I would just say that in the previous system, if you wanted to do something, you needed to know XML, you needed to know, all kinds of things about, making decisions about, mods, metadata schema, or Dublin core, whatever it was that you had to do. You had to have a lot of knowledge about this. Now you can have a lot of knowledge and work with JSTOR, that's great, but you can also, it's as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. And for us, that was a huge selling point because, like Zach said, we had other constituents, without library degrees, without a lot of training, they say, you know what, we could sort of have different, volunteer workers or other staff, working with spreadsheets. People know spreadsheets. That was not, that was a very low bar. And to have that, prepare the spreadsheet, get it in place, and then you upload, and it works. And the amazing thing was that it really works. And I just kept thinking, why is everyone else making this so hard? This is, and I understand because, if you want something that's, incredibly customizable and flexible and things like that, yes, there are things that are more sophisticated than a spreadsheet. But for us, it was perfect, and it continues to be.
Thank you. Zach, go ahead. I see you're
Yeah, I just want to add one other thing, which is say that, because we were dealing with a lot of, like, another one of our big pain points was, we had a lot of fragmented collections with a lot of stakeholders that had their own collection that is about X, or somebody else has something about Y, and it just felt like they weren't empowered to customize or change or anything their own collections without a bunch of mediators in between. And so one thing that has been, one way that pain point's kind of been resolved in Forum is it's nicer to kind of add things to projects in ways where you can assign specific permissions for folks. And again, like Michael was saying, I can give somebody with very little technical expertise, very limited access, where I know they're not going to mess up their own collections, on a technical level, but still be able to do minor things like, correct typos, see usage stats, just stuff that even though our collections are still fragmented in some way, there are ways to democratize the abilities for folks to, I think, like, work on their own collections, which has been nice.
That's great. So I want to kind of turn us into a slightly different direction. I mean, the process of moving from one platform to another is not always simple. And even the decision, I first want to start really with the decision. It's not simple to make the decision to consider an alternative system. It sometimes, you've already touched on this just a little bit, often requires various kinds of leadership alignment, certainly an institutional commitment to go through an assessment process, whatever that might look like. So could you each maybe just dive in a little more deeply into what the decision-making process was like for your organization, just to even consider like, hey, we've reached a point we're going to consider alternatives, and here's how we're going to go about that consideration. Zach, do you want to get us started there?
Yeah, sure. And so I think one thing that made this decision somewhat easier is we could look around at all the stakeholders that had some kind of stake in digital collections and ask, are you happy with what we're doing? And the answer was probably a universal no, I would say. And so I think that we were starting from a place where folks might have not have known what they wanted to transition to, whether we could transition, what was out there, what was possible, how long it would take, but everyone knew that they weren't happy with what they had. And so that's why I think, like, this pilot project for us was extremely important to make sure that we had something where we could compare something, like for like again, and really show people, here's what we had before, here's the exact same thing on a different platform, and here's what's different, here's what's worse or better or what have you. And so there was kind of like that was kind of how we addressed some of the comments from stakeholders. But I also think that our library administration was looking at this in a completely different way. There was not as much, frankly, as at an administrator level, like, sure, you understand your folks might be annoyed as to the technical challenges of getting things uploaded or not, but what are you concerned about? You're concerned about cost. You're concerned about knowing how much things are going to cost, how much time things will take, and how many people are using how many things people are using from your library. And so those were all three things that, once we were able to show numbers behind those, and JSTOR had them for us, usage statistics, for instance, like, immediately we could see, how things were being accessed from where, what was most popular, number of hits, things like that. And it was more than we saw before. In terms of, the cost of something like that, we could say, here's their pricing model because this is a product. There's no hidden cost in terms of IT tech support or server space or things like that. It's all laid out there with a set number. And so by the time we reached, the end of this pilot project, and we're able just to be like, here you go, what do you guys think? All the stakeholders are pretty happy with what they've seen. From an administration perspective, they were sitting here looking at this and like, this is a win-win. I know exactly how much things will cost. I can see exactly how much usage we're going to have. And my team isn't bugging me as much as they used to about how hard things are. So
That's great. Michael, did you want to jump in there?
Sure. I really, have to smile at some of those things because the same thing was happening for us. We had a lot of lead time when we were told that, okay, this service of hosting a repository is going to be going away. And because we were able to move very quickly with JSTOR, if for some reason it didn't work out, we could have gotten into a more involved process in comparison and trying some different other products, but we didn't need to. We said, we came up with a rubric that said, this is what we need it to do. And, if it does this and it, and we're happy with it, this is a win. We were sort of running neck and neck with JSTOR development at the time, because as with the Jazz Archives, audio and video were really important to us, and they were sort of on the JSTOR roadmap. And so they got audio in place. We uploaded audio. It worked. Okay, they said, what, video's coming. I think it was by the end of the year or something like that. They got it done like on the 1st of December instead of on the 30th of December, and we were able to test everything that we wanted, and everything worked just what we needed. And so we had formed just a small sort of task force to do the evaluation and to try things out. And our library director saw how happy we were with how things were going with the trial, and said, this, why should we look anywhere else? This is really meeting all our needs. Again, looking at the cost, looking at the resources that it's going to require, looking at what kind of training or anything that needs to go on to get it working. And it really, everything that we needed, it had. And then the other, like Zach mentioned, the other stakeholders, our university archivist, our metadata librarian, some of the other librarians could come in and say, well, we have an idea for a collection. Do you think this is something that you could try out and see if it works? And it's like, yes, we can do that. And in the course of a week, let's say, we went from 0 to 60 with collections. I mean, again, well, these are small things, but deciding on what the field should be, okay, getting the things digitized, getting them uploaded, getting everything done, and we instantly saw results. And that, again, the excitement that we had from seeing that was tremendous. And then it was all about the usage. And we sort of recognized the idea that what, people have heard of JSTOR. If you put something on the JSTOR platform and you say, people are searching, one thing, you say, hey, did you know about this other thing? People are going to look at it. And we started seeing usage that was just phenomenal from all over the world. It was just, publicity and marketing at, I mean, yes, there was a cost, but it wasn't an additional cost. We didn't have any other staff that were out there, pushing these things. We didn't have to do marketing or publicity or anything like that. It was just automatically happening because it was getting in front of the eyeballs of people that were already on JSTOR, already looking, already doing research in the areas that our collections support. And so, we never could have had that any other way. Even with the support of the consortium or anything like that, it was just tremendous, and it continues to be. We really see outstanding usage from all over the world, and that's it's amazing. So that's been a huge success for us.
I just want to add on something before we move on, Roger, to what Michael said, because it reminded me of a story that I was thinking of, which was that I quietly published or loaded up a collection of early Jewish history collections to be, it's like a big international collection, like lots of German, Hebrew kind of stuff, and quietly had set it to publish on a Friday, thinking I'd get back to it the next week. And, hey, let's start to get a press release, start to think about how we advertise this to groups and stuff. And I get a call Monday morning before I'd even like gotten into work from a researcher in Germany who was like, I didn't even know that you guys had already published the Glotzer collection. Like, I heard from a friend that da-da-da happened and like that it was up. And I was like, what are you I set that on like a Friday at 5 p.m. and it's, Monday morning the next week, and have done zero publicity. And so, but it's already made its rounds among academics, over the weekend, and folks already knew that this collection was online. It was just like really cool that could happen.
Thank you. Zach and Michael, you're going to bring tears to the eyes of me and a lot of my colleagues here, because so much of our mission in this work, as a community organization, is the discovery and impact of these precious, unique, incredibly valuable collections that have been, under accessible just by virtue of, some of the systems environment and, lack of digitization and other issues. And so it's a real honor to hear like some of the impact that you've just described. And I think that we were sort of going in the direction of talking about some of the transition dynamics, and is the as one of my colleagues would say, is the juice worth the squeeze when it comes to making the transition? But what you've described here, like it's clear, it's pretty clear what the juice is. And then I guess my question is, you've already spoken a little bit to it. It sounds like the squeeze of like actually moving your materials and your staff or student workers, your processes onto the JSTOR stewardship platform wasn't overwhelming. It sounds like it was worth it. So I appreciate hearing that. And if you want to add anything to that process, I think you've both already touched on it a bit, but if you did want to add anything there, happy to.
I mean, I would just say that. Oh, I'm sorry.
You
go
go
ahead,
first, Michael.
Okay.
No, you go.
I did the bulk of the heavy lifting in terms of the migration, and but again, it's going to an Excel spreadsheet, and so I learned about how to concatenate XML files and get them all together, and then how to write Excel formulas that would automatically turn those things into what we want, which is a single line for each record. But once I had done that, then it was easy. And so in terms of the migration, it was only the migration part was a challenge, but again we did it in let's say a month. And it was largely me, one person, not the world's greatest expert on this stuff, but it was easy enough to get done. But the amazing thing was, once you've done a migration, and you've dealt with that, for future things, you don't have to do any of that. You're starting with Excel. You're just getting the information in there to make your decisions, create your fields, enter your data, and you're good to go. The hardest part for us was, dealing with, okay, here's the XML, files from this previous repository. And that, I mean, if we were going, no matter where we were going, you're going to have to deal with that. But, going forward, everything has been just a piece of cake.
That's great.
And
Zach, yeah.
Yeah, my thing is real quick, which is to say that, when we first transitioned, I know JSTOR offers a certain amount of, help in transitioning some files. And so some of that was taken care of for us, and was easy. But again, honestly, like what I've really appreciated is like future transfers cost X dollars. And that is a really helpful thing when you are talking to folks who, like if I can't do it, or if I don't want to, do something from scratch, that, there are some set prices and stuff of things that you all can help with, which again is nice from an administrator's perspective who cares more about numbers and stats and how much things cost. And so huge help that's even available, for a number instead of, I don't know, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we've worked hard to build a set of services that can, where they're needed, can be helpful for supporting that kind of work. I did want to ask, just to kind of close up this panel, What are the outcomes that you're seeing? You've already both spoken a little bit to this, but the things that are other things that you haven't highlighted already that feel easier now, or things that are possible for you to achieve in terms of your own goals and mission that weren't possible before. Zach, maybe we'll let you start.
Yeah, that sounds good. I will just say I'm going to go back to usage stats again. I know I've talked about it before, but because that has recently in recent years become the driver of how we in the library in special collections at least are assessed on our impact across the university and across the country and internationally. That has become our bread and butter, and that is where I'm able to show what's possible now is that I can show really big numbers, even if I could maybe try to do like a Google Analytics thing and see how much collections are being used. Suddenly, at the drop of a hat, just as easy as like logging in and exporting a spreadsheet, I can show that when the chancellor's saying, "What's your international impact?" I can say, "Here it is. Here's what they're looking for," kind of thing. And so that's been really nice. And I think the other thing that might not have been mentioned before is just that it what's possible is that your product just like I don't know, the product just looks good out of the box. Like that is one thing that's possible now is that I don't have to, no one on my team or me has to think about design or anything like that. We can think in terms of technical aspects and then get some of this data on the back end. But I can just give people a site and I know it's going to work. It's going to look pretty good. And all I have to do is like maybe pick a cover photo, and like that's just like something that while it seems minor, means that something that could have been a pain point before is suddenly like not even part of our equation, kind of thing, which is really nice. And so I think those are things that are definitely possible before that weren't before that I haven't mentioned with all the other. It's super easy to use and everybody can learn it, and students use it and all that kind of thing.
Thank you, Michael. Did you want to close us out?
Yeah, I would just say, it's sort of tying into that. In our previous repository and other systems, like I said, they're very flexible, they're very configurable. You have, but you get a lot of decisions. You have to make a lot of things, and you can say, well, let's make it look exactly like this, and you're sort of reinventing the wheel. Because with JSTOR, it goes on the JSTOR platform, which people are looking at for journals, they're looking at for books, they're looking at for other archival content, ArtStore, all these other things, and people are already used to that, and they like it. This is, again, when I look at, our usage statistics, for, the non-archival content at JSTOR, obviously this is a huge platform that is incredibly popular, and our stuff looks just as good because it's on that same platform, and we don't have to
It
work
is
on
just as good. It is just as
well,
good.
but every people here can say, wow, it looks really professional, even though they know that, it's just me in my little office, doing this stuff. So that's the wonderful thing, is that, you don't have to try to keep up with the Joneses, okay, on like, can we make our system look as good as JSTOR does? We're on JSTOR. And and there's this added bonus of, it's not that we're, it's not that JSTOR created a standalone repository platform and you can have that in your own system. It's that your content is there alongside of everything else, and it's being recommended, and it's showing up in searches, and it's getting in front of the eyes of the people who want to see it, while they're, they may not even know about your institution, its existence, but because they're doing a search, now it's being introduced to them. And that's that's the fantastic thing that I just watch on the weekly usage thing. Okay, what countries have we got coming in on this stuff now? Who's the what's the number one collection that we have here? What's going on in that? And it's just it's wonderful. And again, the ease of how it happens is for us the huge selling point. And I like to say it's so much easier for us to go from a dream to reality. You have an idea for a collection, you know what, we know we can make it happen, and we know it's gonna look good. And it's and again, it just gets added to our repository, goes up there as a new collection, and then instantly it's worldwide. it's out there for everyone. And we
Thank
see the
you.
results. It's not just a hypothetical. You know, it's like we see the results. We know that it's getting seen.
Thank you. I'm going to thank you both very, very much for your really thoughtful and really helpful reflections. We will now close off the panel part of the session, but we will ask you to stick around and come back when we do Q&A in a few minutes. So if you haven't, to attendees who may not have already had a chance to submit questions, please feel free to do that now or at any point. And my colleague Jason Przybylski is now going to join us to give you a slightly abbreviated view of the system we've been talking about. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Roger. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, especially Michael and Zach, for everything you shared. I'm going to do my best to follow that, but I don't know that I really have much I can add. But as Roger said, I'm going to do a brief demonstration, and I'll try to actually show, on the platform, both the front end and the back end, some of what Michael and Zach were highlighting in their conversation. So we're starting here. We're looking. This is UDC's institutional kind of landing page on the JSTOR platform. And as Michael and Zach both said, when you're sharing your collections on JSTOR, you have your own space, like we see here, which is kind of your ecosystem within JSTOR. But it really does take advantage of the fact that this is integrated onto the whole JSTOR platform. So it's really kind of leveraging the infrastructure that we've built over the years at JSTOR through our community support to make your digital collections available, help kind of reach that kind of impact by making them available in a place that we know people are already coming, especially in the humanities, arts, and social sciences, as part of their kind of existing workflows. And so when you share your collections to JSTOR, you have the option of making them openly available, in which case they're truly freely available to anyone, anywhere in the world. A person does not need to be affiliated with a JSTOR participating institution to find and use those collections. Or you can make collections institutional access only, in which case they're available just to your own community. Those collections, as I was saying, in addition to being discoverable by coming to your own institutional landing page, where you can search across those collections, browse through the collections. Those are also indexed on the JSTOR platform, so they're discoverable alongside the books, journals, art store images, other content on the platform. The open collections are also indexed in all of the search engines, specifically Google, and because of JSTOR's relevancy in the Google search algorithm, those tend to show up quite highly in Google search results. And they're also indexed and integrated with the various library discovery services. So the idea is that wherever somebody's starting their work, they can discover and use your digital collections in the course of that work. And so we see here, this is UDC's collections. We see some of those great kind of jazz archive materials that we were talking about earlier. And I'm going to come back to some of that in a moment. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail. And then I'm going to flip over here. We can look at how Vanderbilt has set up their institutional landing page. And again, from here, we can search across their collections, or we can scroll down and browse through their collections. And we see they have a range of materials from archival materials, people's papers, as well as some internal materials like their yearbooks and their own, kind of Vanderbilt history, things like that. If we were to go into one of these collections, let's go into this collection here. We can see then that each collection also has its own landing page that, again, we can search across or browse through. Zach and his team at Vanderbilt have also set up sub-collections, so we can go even a level deeper and kind of search or browse at that level. Or we can scroll down and just see the different items in the collection, as well as the facets on the left rail here. If we were to go into one of these items, we can take a look at kind of what an image looks like on the JSTOR platform. We see, of course, the metadata on the left-hand side that's being managed and shared by Vanderbilt, and then the image on the right-hand side. And this is using the JSTOR platform's embedded IIIF viewer, so you can zoom in, zoom out, compare with other images across the platform and things like that. If we go back to the collection, we can take a look at what a text-based item looks like. And this looks like, this is going to be very familiar to anyone who's familiar with the JSTOR platform. This looks like just looking at any other text item, journal, article, book, chapter, whatnot on the JSTOR platform. So you have the item on the right-hand side. You can search across the document on screen. You can scroll through. You can read it on screen. You can, of course, take advantage of the features that are embedded in the JSTOR platform. So it does have a stable URL that can be used to save and link to. You, of course, have the functionality to cite this item, save this to your workspace. So if you have professors who are teaching with items across the JSTOR platform, they can save and share those workspaces, or students or researchers who are doing their own work and they want to save items from this collection as well as any other items on the JSTOR platform, they can use those workspaces to do that. And then, of course, if you decide to allow your material to be downloaded, the end user can download these items and take them and use them however they might like to. I mentioned that we'd come back to some of those JAS materials from UDC, so let's take a look at an audio item. And Michael mentioned in his discussion how they were kind of following JSTOR's development of support for audio and video. So this is kind of the result of that. When you manage or add audio and video through the digital asset management system, upon upload, our system will automatically generate transcripts of that material. And then if you share it to the JSTOR platform, those transcripts come along with it. So that ensures that audio and video is just as discoverable as text and image on the JSTOR platform. It also ensures, a certain kind of baseline level of accessibility for that audio and video. And so we can see an example of that here. This is from UDC's archives. We see this is an interview with Nina Simone. The metadata here, which is managed by UDC on the back end, is all presented. But then you have the audio player right here embedded in the platform. So you can play the audio. You can scroll down, and here we see this is the transcript that was auto-generated by the system. So you can use that transcript to read through the item. You can use these timestamps that are generated to they're clickable, so you can use them to navigate the item. And then as the audio plays, the text is also highlighted. So you can follow along as you're listening to an audio or watching a video item. All right. Zach and Michael both also talked about the statistics that are available once an institution starts making their collections available on JSTOR. So this is an example of what that kind of usage dashboard looks like. And we're really trying with this to show both what does that high level, just what is that like high level, number of uses you have for your collections. But beyond that, we're trying to demonstrate what is the impact of making your collections available on JSTOR. Who is using it? How are they using it? What are they using? Things like that. And so here we see an example from an institution that's sharing a number of collections on JSTOR. So we can see their high level usage. We're tracking the metric we're using to track this usage is the Counter 5 compliant item requests metric. So that's the same metric we're using to share other usage on JSTOR across journals and books, etc. You can see what percentage of your items on the platform have been accessed. You can see how many countries access is coming from, and you can see how many times that institutional landing page of yours has been viewed. As we scroll down, you can also, of course, track that usage over time. You can see the top used items, top countries where usage is coming from, top institutions where usage is coming from. Now, as I said, for your openly available collection, somebody does not need to be at a JSTOR participating institution to find and use those materials. But if they are affiliated with a JSTOR institution, we're able to share that information with you so you can get a sense of who's using your materials that you're making available. And then finally, this chart on the bottom right here kind of breaks down usage by what percentage is coming from your own institution versus other JSTOR participating institutions versus, as far as we can tell, people who have no institutional affiliation and are just discovering your materials on the JSTOR platform in the course of their searching on Google or wherever. A trend we often see that's reflected here is that your own institution or the institution whose collections these are, they are oftentimes, kind of represent the biggest individual user of those materials on JSTOR. So they're reaching their own community, they're reaching their own, scholars, faculty, students. But when you look at kind of how that breaks out by usage as a whole, that generally makes up only about 3 to 5% of their total usage of their materials on JSTOR. So they are both reaching, their own community, but also reaching well beyond that as well by making their collections available on JSTOR. All right. going to spend the last few minutes here just giving a very high level kind of quick tour of the back end of the digital asset management environment. Now, this is built on JSTOR's infrastructure. This is the same system that we use to manage some of the content we're making available on JSTOR. So this is how we're managing ArtStore content and Reveal digital content and things like that. And so we're making that same kind of developed supported infrastructure available to institutions to manage their own digital collections. So it kind of has that grounding behind it. But it also has the flexibility to allow you to use this to meet whatever your particular institutional needs might be. So this is what the back end of the digital asset management system looks like. You have a lot of control over managing users and access to the back end of the system. So you can entirely on your own, without needing to come to us, you can add users to the system, because this is all cloud-based and cloud-hosted, and usage is just password kind of managed. You can add new users, you can control the level of access and administration that those users have. And then once you add access to the system, you can then take the next step of choosing which projects specifically in the system they have access to, and what level of access they have. And the benefit of that is that you can really control not only who has access to the system, but specifically which projects do they have access to. So you can have different departments or different groups on campus who are all using the same kind of back-end system, but you can have it set up so that they're only seeing and able to work on the projects that are relevant to them. And so you can see here, this is where we can add individual users, and you can add users with different kind of levels of responsibility. And I think it was Zach who talked about, having students work in the system. You can set up users with very specific kind of roles and permissions, such as a student, so that they only see certain fields and can only take certain actions. So it really supports, if you need it, that kind of robust kind of ability to manage access to the back end of the system. There are several ways, and Michael and Zach will talk about this a little bit, to create or create new projects or new collections in the system. One way, and this isn't really the focus of our conversation here today, but I will just mention it for those institutions who are participating in our charter program, to use the JSTOR SeqLite tool, which is an AI-assisted tool that provides first pass item level metadata for items. You can start building a new project by simply bringing in your undescribed items, loading them through the system. It will create that kind of first pass metadata and then set it up as a project within the digital asset management system for you to take forth and do the work you might want to do. The second way that you can bring in new collections into the system is if you have existing projects, if you have existing collections and you have the metadata in a spreadsheet and you have the corresponding media. This is, kind of the process I think Michael was talking about a little bit. You can literally just drag and drop, bring in that metadata, bring in that media, and within a matter of minutes, the system will set that up for you on the back end, and it will use your pre-existing metadata schemas without you having to do any kind of additional setup or work to support that. And then finally, the kind of final option for creating a new project in the system is if you're building something from scratch. So if you're starting a brand new project, you can walk through the steps of creating a new project, giving that project a name, and then choosing the kind of standard metadata schema to start your work from. You'll see there are several options here that you can choose from that best matches the work that you're doing. You can preview those metadata schemas, including the fields that are included, the types of fields, all of that. But that's really just the starting point. Once you set that up, you can then edit, control, manipulate that metadata however you want to. So while you can start with those kind of templates, you have kind of infinite flexibility to set those up however you would like to. Once you have a built project within the system, you can easily manage, edit, add to that, delete to that from the list view, from an individual item view. You can do that work directly in the system here. As we see at the item level, you have the fields that we can edit directly in the system alongside the media. As Michael and Zach talked about, you can also work via spreadsheet. So if Excel is your preferred kind of workflow, you can export Excel spreadsheets. You can then import those Excel spreadsheets and do all of your work that way. So again, it really supports whatever your workflow might be. Once you have the projects in the system, you can then manage how you're sharing those out. So you can share to JSTOR, that's what we've been talking about, but you can also share to other third-party sites. So you can share content to Omeka to support the building of digital exhibits. You can also support to any other, or share to any other third-party site that supports an OAI server. So you can, most institutions use this to share to places like their library catalog, or to regional collaboratives, or places like DPLA, additional ways to syndicate their content and make it discoverable and usable. You can also, while we have built this whole kind of ecosystem, it isn't by no means a closed system. So you have those ways to kind of share content out. You can also easily at any point export the metadata, export the media, and take that and use it wherever else you might want to use it. So it has a lot of kind of like built-in ecosystem, but it is by no means a closed system. And then finally, there is this option, which Roger talked about a little bit at the beginning, where if you want to also send your digital collections to Portico for long-term managed preservation, that is integrated directly into the system as well. All right. I think in the name of time, and I want to make sure we have some time for questions, I think I will stop there and just close by saying, I think we've at least tried to build a system that leverages the infrastructure that we've invested in and developed here at JSTOR to create a solution that can really support the impact, discovery, and management of your digital collections, and we hope a meaningful way.
Jason, thank you so much. Zach and Michael, I don't know if you can both join us. I know Zach has to leave a minute or two early, maybe 5 minutes early. But so maybe I can just very quickly put a quick question to Zach, and then Michael can add in as well. You both spoke so much and so eloquently about the discovery and impact and usage that you've seen through putting your collections on JSTOR. Have you done very much to kind of quantify that value, or use the usage statistics? Jason showed that dashboard that we've developed. Have you done much to kind of use that to advocate internally, or upward within the organization, document the sort of a sense of value? I'd love to hear anything about that you might be able to share.
Yeah, and sorry everyone that I have to hop off here soon, but this is kind of the perfect question for me, because this is exactly like my day-to-day life right now, is advocating for our value and showing our collections here. And so I'll give the answer in two ways, Roger. One is that like many institutions, we've seen a drop in our well, in some institutions, I'd say, we've seen a drop in our reading room visits since COVID, and just over the past couple of years. And instead of us scrambling to be worried and be like, well, how can we're doing more to get other folks in. But instead of us not having a good reason for that happening, instead, I'm able to easily show that the collections that we have statistics for that were previously most used in the reading room, we decided to digitize in their entirety, put on JSTOR, and now the usage is well beyond even what that was. And so it's such a good explanation of, yes, when you digitize your collections and make them available to everyone online, some folks, like a slightly smaller number, will come in to see the collection in person, but instead you're reaching such a broader audience. So that's been one really beneficial thing. And then the second thing I'll say is that we do at least have our usage numbers from before 2020 for digital collections. And so, well, it's not like quite an apples to apples comparison in that sense, because it's years on in different ways. I can see that, 7 years ago when I started Vanderbilt, the digital collection that I use is like man, they always get such good use. It's so annoying. Like, I can now see that our numbers are quadruple that. And suddenly I can tell folks that remember that, and remember, oh, how amazing X database was, and how we all thought it was incredible, how much it was being used. I'm showing numbers that are 4 times that amount. And it's just we haven't quantified it in like a monetary sense yet, but we have quantified it in the sense of, I have gotten 0 questions or challenges as to, what are you doing with your money? What are you doing with your time? Who are you reaching, kind of thing. Like, all of that has been solved by the usage stats. So yeah, thank you guys so much for inviting me.
Great.
I really
thanks for
this.
Thanks for participating. I know you may have to run now. We'll catch up soon. Michael, did you want to speak to that question at all yourself, by any chance?
I would just say that again, we've here at the university been dealing with a lot of, physical relocation things, and things have been closed, and things have been moved, and things have been inaccessible. And so we've, had it sort of a, intentional move to get, okay, well, you know what, let's move, get this collection digitized and put it online. And so what we're happy about is when we do that and we look at the usage in the past, we weren't able to get, statistics that were sort of as granular in terms of, like you showed, the countries or the type of institution or what's inside your institution, what's outside, all those kinds of things. We weren't able to get that. We just sort of got a number. Okay, here's the hits, and we just like, well, is that good? Is that bad? We don't know. But the dashboard really does a great job of showing, in comparison to all your collections, for us, there's a collection that really stands out. And the thing that amazed me about that is when I dug a little deeper into that, which the statistics let you do, and I look at just that collection, I can see that collection has had 0 usage by our institution. All of the usage has come from out in the world, which is just fascinating to me, because it's like, and again, different collections are going to have different responses, but to really show the sort of international impact of this one collection, it's just immediate to see it. It's obvious. So that's been helpful. And then it sort of in the past, we've sort of had to rely on a lot of anecdotal interactions, like Zach mentioned. Oh, I got a call about this collection. It's like, we'll get an email, we'll get a call, we'll get something like that. Somebody will mention something, and you'll say, oh, gee, I guess our collections are reaching people. Now we really have a lot more data in terms of that we can show. And even if people don't bother to email us or call us, I know that the people at such and such an institution are looking at our stuff, and they find it valuable. And that's useful for me, and that's useful for our library director and other stakeholders with this. That we have evidence that shows the impact of our collections.
That's great. Thank you. There is at least one other question I was hoping to put to you all, but I don't think we have time for it. Just to say very briefly that there's a real interest in the security and sort of platform maintenance issues that we face, and I think we'll find other ways to talk about that in the future. But Jason, thank you so much for the demo. I don't think I had a chance to say that. I really appreciate you abbreviating it and walking us through it so quickly. It's something that we could easily spend an hour or two going through all the specifics on. And Michael and Zach, in his absence, let me just say thank you so much for the wonderful panel discussion, for sharing your perspectives and experiences so generously with us and all the participants today. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.